So hello, everyone. We just finished watching Other Side of the Hill, a really important film telling some very wonderful stories. And we at republicEn are so honored to have with us today Jim Walls and Nick Johnson, both of whom you saw in the movie. They are with the Lake County Resources Initiative, or LCRI, and they're here to talk more about the issues brought up in the film, to answer any questions you might have for them, and just to continue the conversation. So let me introduce these guys. So Jim Walls is the founding director and the current board chair of LCRI. After a 22-year career with USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, working with agricultural producers in the Midwest, Jim was asked to move back to the place he grew up, Lakeview, Oregon, and assist the community, which was facing the detrimental economic impacts resulting from the downturn of the timber industry. Jim worked with local partners to form LCRI in 2002. He looked to renewable energy as an opportunity to start rebuilding the local economy, and in the process paved a new path forward for rural communities that provides social, economic, and ecological benefits, also known as the triple bottom line. Jim served as the executive director of LCRI until his retirement in 2018, and since then has continued to be involved in the community and LCRI's board of directors, currently serving as board chair. Nick Johnson is the executive director at LCRI. Nick was born and raised in Eastern Oregon and joined LCRI in 2018 after graduating from college and working for a few years in the wood products industry. After Jim's retirement, Nick transitioned into the position of executive director. He continues to build on the progress made by Jim and others and stays true to LCRI's original purpose, implementing projects that provide triple bottom line benefits. Nick has also expanded the organization's scope, including renewable energy project development assistance to rural business owners, carbon content monitoring in soil, and natural resource management strategies that promote ecosystem resilience in the face of a changing climate. So without further ado, let's welcome Nick and Jim. Can you guys say hi? Make sure we can hear you.
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
All right, there's Nick. And Jim, are you there? Jim, I think you might be on mute.
Now I'm unmuted. See, I don't have a grandkid here to keep me straight, so you know.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so pleased to have both of you here. It's such a fantastic opportunity because, you know, usually when you watch like a documentary film, you know, it just ends and you turn off the screen and you might think and wonder about the people you saw in the film. But today we have two of them right here with us. And so I really welcome everyone here to ask all the questions you might have. And the way you do that is through the chat in the Zoom platform. And, you know, it's always more engaging to ask questions, you know, face to face. And so I might, when I get to your question, I might call on you and ask you to turn on your camera and ask your question directly. If you'd rather not do that, if you would rather me just read your question, please, when you submit your question, just say no video, please. And then I won't do that to you. But it's always more fun to see people's faces if you're comfortable doing that. So in the chat box, make sure you're sending a question to everyone. And Price Atkinson, who is with republicEn and he's on the call too, he's going to be collecting all the questions. And then we'll go through as many as we can in the next 20-25 minutes. Okay, so while people are thinking of their questions and putting it in, I'm just going to ask the first question myself. So Jim and Nick, I was wondering for both of you, when you were first approached to be featured in this documentary, what did you think? Like, were you like, yes, I can't wait to tell the world this story, or were you like, why do they want to talk to us? I'm just curious what that experience was like. I don't know, Jim, do you want to go first?
Well, I believe that when I first heard about it and stuff, that I saw it as an opportunity to talk to the other half of Oregon that we always don't understand, the west and east side, you know, and what we go through, and to tell our story. We're not all just out here, you know, taking advantage of the land. We really care about the land and the future of this place. And I thought it was an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be here and speak with everybody. So thank you all for being here and watching the film and listening to us speak. But to answer your question, so when I was first approached about the film, I was pretty suspicious. You know, I didn't have any connections with the folks who produced the film. And you know, bringing in a director who was out of San Diego, California, I had some concerns with that as well. You know, and before I agreed to move forward, I really asked a lot of questions about what the goal of this film was going to be, how we were going to be portrayed, and really just wanted to make sure that the director and the team behind the film were respectful of the, you know, the rapport and the relationship we have with our community, and the work that we do, and really wanted to make sure that we were portrayed accurately. And I felt comfortable with that. And I've, you know, still in close contact with the producers and the director of the film, and I consider them all friends now and have a great amount of trust in them. But initially I was pretty suspicious and had a lot of questions for sure.
As a healthy dose of skepticism, I'm sure. Well, it turned out really great, and I hope that you feel like they told your story well and in the right way. Okay, we do have some questions coming in, but maybe I'll throw it over to Bob Inglis. So Bob Inglis is the executive director here at republicEn, and he's a former congressman from South Carolina. And Bob, do you wanna put in a question here for Nick or Jim? Oh wait, I have to unmute you, Bob, or maybe you have to unmute yourself.
There we go. There we go. Now we're unmuted. So yes, Jim and Nick, this is the second time I've seen the film, and I admit to having sort of wet eyes both times. I mean, it's just sort of amazing the way that you all were speaking in the film, and it made me think. Really, the key word you came to was trust. I think, Nick, you were talking with Jim in that segment, and you said it's trust. And it seems to me that trust is the thing that is fairly broken. And in the contest, as I understand, between East and West Oregon, it's pretty substantial break, and you all are able to put it together in these meetings and in the collaborative work. You think you can scale that up for the country? I mean, what's the what's the story? What does it take? One of you be vice president, the other be president, and then we do it that way. You know, my friend Brian Baird from Seattle area, he was a Democrat in Congress, and I was a Republican in Congress. We had a joke going that we were going to run for president and vice president. And on a ticket, you know, both Democrats and Republicans, we're going to have a coin toss to decide who won which seat. And so he won the coin toss, and no, I won the coin toss. And I said, Brian says, well, I guess you'll be president. I said, no, I won. I'm the vice president. I'm just going to have fun while you do all the work. All right. And so one of you may want to be vice president, the other president. But what do you think it takes? I mean, honestly, seriously, you were able to build this trust. Can you replicate that elsewhere? Can you help us?
I believe so. And Bob, I know Brian too. I worked in Washington on the coast in Grays Harbor. And, so I know him. And no, I don't want to run for president or vice president. Not sure. But can we, I think sharing this film and what it's done in Oregon already shows that it has that positive impact of bringing two sides together. I cannot believe the togetherness we've had with other groups on the Western side over this film. And it's really worked, and willing in whatever way to help that go broader outside of running for president or vice president.
So Nick, we got to count on you to be president then, I guess. And
well, I was going to volunteer Jim to be president. I was going to say president sounds great to me. I heard that's a little more relaxed. But you know, to answer your question about, you know, scaling this up and kind of, you know, pursuing this effort on a national level, I think there is certainly an opportunity for that. But I have to say that's from my perspective, which is a fairly narrow scope. You know, we speak with folks in different parts of the country, and really the film has been the platform and the launching point for a lot of those conversations. But you hear that the rural-urban divide is not just something that is specific to Oregon. It sounds like it's an issue in a lot of different parts of the country. And, they may not be disagreeing about the same things, that we've had disagreement about in Oregon. But really that divide certainly seems to exist in a lot of different places, and Jim, I just have to say, all the work that Jim did when he started LCRI and came on board really set the stage and allowed me to do the work that I'm doing now. And, huge kudos to Jim, obviously, because building that trust in the first place is really where all that hard work was. They powered through the disagreements and the arguments and the tough conversations and put that stuff front and center. And worked really hard to build that trust. It was necessary to be in a position where we are today. I feel it's a little easier on my end because I just have to maintain that and respect that and just make sure that we continue to foster those relationships. But yeah, trust is absolutely critical. And I think it is the building blocks for having these conversations and making progress. But trust, as we all know, is a delicate thing. And you got to work really hard to maintain that and build that.
You got to set down the rules, Bob, when you're having the meeting with groups of opposite opinion. I'll be honest, there was one or two environmentalists when we first started out. I'd love to punch, but we're best friends now, but we had a rule that we don't have to agree with everybody's opinion, but we respect and listen to it. And then we discuss, and then we come to an agreement. So it's a process that takes some work, and it has to be agreed on that it does take that work and agree to do that work.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Bob. That was a really, really good question. We're going to go to some audience questions now. So the first question, I'm going to go to Chuck Jensen. I'm going to see if you want to go on camera and unmute yourself, Chuck. So Chuck had some questions about geothermal as well as wind. Chuck, do you want to ask your question directly?
Yeah, I'm a native Oregonian, and I've always thought of southern Oregon around Lakeview as having potential for geothermal. Is that something that could be developed on an economical level?
Most definitely. Our first plan for economics using renewable energy was based around biomass from doing thinnings to reduce fires, and geothermal with a little solar up at Backscatter, which was a radar site that to detect incoming missiles. It turned around, solar became the dominant, but still those other opportunities are there. Now we got to get Congress to agree, and Senator Wyden has worked on this, that we can use biomass off federal lands for energy. We've got a company being built here that's making diesel fuel out of biomass, but they can't use federal timber. Instead, we burn it and put the carbon dioxide to slash piles up in the air, So we got to make some changes there, but those are still real opportunities.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jim is saying. And to speak a little bit more about geothermal, we have a ton of geothermal resource in the Warner Valley here in Lake County. I mean, there are hot water wells everywhere, and we're talking 200 degree or 210 degree at the surface level that this water is spewing out of the ground. Our prison, our schools, and our hospital are already heated off of geothermal. And ultimately, one of my, long-term goals for LCRI is to develop, a project that essentially provides geothermal heating to the downtown business district, as well as make that accessible to residential homeowners. But there are some serious barriers with adopting geothermal on a broader scale. And part of that is capital, of course, that would be extremely expensive. But there are also some, engineering and technological hurdles. Geothermal has some great potential and great opportunities. But what we've seen with the existing system here in Lake County is that the maintenance costs are pretty high. And that's due to a couple different reasons. The water here is high in mineral content and is corrosive in some ways. So I think that there's an engineering hurdle, but there's, I guess, to answer your question directly, there's a huge opportunity for geothermal. And ultimately that would kind of be my dream project here with LCRI. As far as, I guess, wind goes, it sounds, there have been assessments done to check out the wind resource value here in Lake County, and it's not really viable for commercial wind generation here. When we have wind, it's super windy, but when we don't have wind, there's none. So it's too hit or miss to commercially developed wind projects.
Great, thanks, Chuck. I'll turn to John Doherty. I will let you unmute yourself if you'd like to. He has questions about how compatible renewable energy is with farming in terms of land use. John, do you want to ask your question directly?
Yeah, hi. It's great to be here, and I'm really appreciating this. And just for the record, I'm a Southern Oregonian myself. I grew up in Gold Hill, Oregon, and for us, Lakeview was big. So put that in perspective. Of course, same thing there in the Rogue Valley, that timber and farming were the key things. And I grew up dreaming that I'd drive a log truck someday, and didn't turn out that way, but it was a dream. So my question is, I was noting with the wind farms that it looked like farming was going on at the same time as the windmills, which to me seems like a really good thing. I mean, our farmland is precious, and I'm just wondering to what extent renewable energy and other uses of the land are compatible.
I'm happy to speak to that one, Jim, if you want me to take a stab there. So John, we completely agree with you here at LCRI about how precious, workable farmland is, particularly irrigated ag land. At least in Lake County, it's one of our biggest economic drivers here. And LCRI, we do not support the development of solar projects specifically on irrigated ag land. It just doesn't seem like a good trade-off or a good resource exchange. So we really value and do our best to protect irrigated ag lands. And that's becoming a much larger conversation in Oregon right now, especially with like the passing of House Bill 2021. We're going to see a lot more future development of renewable energy projects, particularly in rural communities and in Eastern Oregon. So those, conversations around land use, the time for those conversations is right now, and you're starting to see it on a county level. Mostly, and in my own opinion, I think that a lot of those land use decisions around renewable energy development should be left up to counties. They know, and how best to use the resources that they have, and they know what the community values. Here in Lake County, we've formed what we're calling a solar siting committee to look at this issue specifically and hopefully come to an agreement as a community where, essentially where we would promote and be okay with future renewable energy projects being built, and where we would oppose them. So yeah, it's a great question. It's a very timely question because it's becoming an increasingly big part of the conversation. It's a pretty serious conversation to be having, for sure. It's, there's some serious ramifications and some long-term things that need to be thought through around land use.
Great. Thanks, John. We have another John with a question, John Mustall. And John, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can as well. You have a question about a carbon tax?
Yeah, my question for Jim and Nick is just about a carbon tax, what they think about that and what its impact might be on the local economy there. Thank you.
I can, we had the cap and trade, and you heard in the film, the Republicans walked out on that bill. And I understand that the first move, why they walked out, the first move was to put a tax. And in a conservative Republican area, that doesn't go over well. But look at what we've accomplished here without a carbon tax, and that will not solve all the problem. But why can't we do that on a broader scale across this nation and then sit down and say, what's left to do to solve climate change? I guess that's, sort of my conservative side of viewing that eventually we're going to have to do more. But all the years that we wasted since LCRI has been working on this, that other areas could have been doing the same thing, we could have accomplished a lot over that time without the carbon tax.
Absolutely. And Jim, you put that really eloquently. Cap and trade, carbon taxes, we kind of look at California as a model of some of the shortcomings with that approach. Jim and I are both in agreement that there's better ways to promote sustainability on a broad scale. Just like Jim was saying, sustainability and, economic development can coexist without things like a carbon tax or cap and trade.
And I think also look at what's happened with forest fires and how much carbon dioxide that's put into the air over the past couple of years, and the communities that have burned down. If we could do more thinnings and still keep the natural way the forest was and use it in a biomass energy, there's another economic incentive and an incentive for better managed forest. And I'm not talking about, forestry as it's viewed in the past. I'm talking about a new way of forestry. Our local sawmill spent, I think, something like 10 million, put in a small diameter mill. If we could cut more logs to thin out the fuel loads, and then use the slash piles rather than burn them, that's a great economic advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you on that, Jim. And there's a couple of different reasons why the forests in the West are so overgrown. Part of that is fire suppression, and part of that is, policy and some of the stuff that we encountered in the 80s and 90s with the downturn of the timber industry. But we're seeing the detrimental impacts of the pendulum swinging too far in the form of catastrophic wildfires. When you couple that with, changing climatic conditions, it's a recipe for disaster, and we're seeing that now frequently. So, trying to implement forest restoration and forest management strategies that keep the forest within its historic range of variation, would provide the opportunity for biomass energy generation and utilizing that as a local economic driver. But above and beyond that, it also offers the opportunity to have healthy soils in our forests. And when we talk about carbon capture, and carbon sequestration and carbon storage, I believe that we should be looking to the soil, and not tree growth and encouraging more overstock forests that will lead to more forest fires. The biggest opportunity in our ecosystems to capture carbon is in the soil, underground for sure.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Betty, Betty Carteret. She has a question about where she lives in a rural community in Washington. Betty, do you want to ask her question?
Sure. Yes, we live north of Seattle, but it's a very rural county with a lot of great soil and agriculture here. The timber industry in the eastern part of the county has really declined, and there's a lot of economic hardship towards that end of the county. Unfortunately, we don't have the same landscape for renewables that you do up there. And, we're facing some real challenges in terms of water supplies and from the glaciers and the timing of water and whatnot really impacting our farms in the future. So do you have any ideas of where we might look for a reinvention of the economy here?
That's kind of a tough question to answer without, really understanding the dynamics in that county for sure. But I guess kind of in general, things that we're looking to and keeping an eye on are things like innovative wood products that can use, the residuals created from restoration and stewardship-based forestry projects like CLT and other engineered wood products, and encouraging the use of those in new building construction and development rather than concrete and steel. Things like that provide the opportunity to maintain a natural resource-based economy, but also meet ecological goals and promote sustainability in general. So I wish I had a better answer to your question. Yeah. I think that a lot of people in a lot of communities are struggling with exactly that question. And I believe it's a good question to be asking, and it leads to the opportunity to convene folks in the community and have those conversations as a community, and brainstorm and kind of hash stuff out and try to identify opportunities, because nobody knows your county better than you.
Uh,
I agree with Nick
Yeah.
on that too. You know, we just don't know your county that well. But he brought up cross-laminated timber. And the research on the carbon sequestration of that program was done by Chad Oliver and Bruce Lipke and James McCarter at the University of Washington. And it showed the great savings that we could build. I think now it's either we have authorities to build 12 to 14-story buildings in metropolitan areas with cross-laminated timber, and the sequestration, the saved is a tremendous benefit. So there's another economic, and I always like to look too at the workers. With cross-laminated timber, whether it's steel and concrete, you still need crane operators. You still need the same people to use. So try and make sure that you're designing stuff that has either retraining programs or other things to get people the jobs that they're used to doing and can do.
Yeah, your film is really inspiring, and I'm wondering, is it available for show? I'd love to show it in our community here, in various communities actually in the county here. Is it available to do showings, community showings?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. This is a really nice segue to talking about what you all can do to promote this film. Before I do that, Bob, do you want to say something just to close this out real quick before I end this here? Bob Inglis? Oh, I have to unmute you again, don't I? I do.
Yeah, you get that control and that mute button when that's pretty impressive. So yes, thank you, Jim and Nick, for being with us, and thank you for a great film. And you know, this trust that you're talking about, we really one thing that we could talk about for a lot longer is how do you get the whole world in on this? And what's really neat is you all figured out a way to get your community involved. And the reason that climate change is such a devilish problem is emissions anywhere, climate change everywhere. And so you literally have to get the whole world in on it. That's really hard. And so these state initiatives on carbon taxes, for example, have had an Achilles heel, which is you can't do anything about China from Oregon or from Washington State, because the state in the United States under the US Constitution can't do a border adjustment, can't tariff stuff coming in if it's coming in from a polluting country. And so it really is incumbent upon the federal government to act. But the neat thing, I'd just leave you with this thought about how to get the world in on it. It's a pretty neat development about Russia and their apparent openness to a carbon tax. It's a little news item that came out recently that Russia is considering a carbon tax. Why? Well, because they've got a brand new pipeline going into the European Union. And when the gas gets there, they're going to have to pay a tax on entry into the EU in a border adjustment. So Russia is thinking about doing their own carbon tax. Why? Well, they'd rather collect the tax at home rather than hand it over to the EU, in which case the gas would come into the EU with no adjustment. And so here's my hope in terms of building trust. If a murderous organized crime syndicate, which is what Russia is, you know, I was on foreign affairs. We said the way to understand Russia is understand it's not a country, it's an organized crime syndicate. But if a murderous organized crime syndicate can figure out, hey, it's in our interest to do a carbon tax because the EU is doing one, that might just cause the whole world to act. In other words, everybody's seeing a way to adjust the economics. And at that point, the wind, which, you know, I once went to speak to the Wind Energy Association. I told them, you know, I'm going to get there and I'm going to tell you that I'm such a conservative. I want to eliminate all your subsidies. And they said, yeah. And you're going to eliminate the subsidy of dumping into the air for free with fossil fuels? And I said, yeah. And they said, come ahead. Because if you get rid of that free subsidy, being able to dump for free into the trash dump of the sky, we don't need the production tax credit at that point, because we'll be on a level playing field with those folks and we'll beat them. And so it's pretty exciting, really. But that takes, what you're into in this film is so true. It takes a lot of trust to get there. And as a conservative, it takes trust to believe that if you're going to do something like a carbon tax, you're going to cut my taxes somewhere else, or you're going to dividend all the money back to me through something like the Alaska Permanent Fund. That takes so much trust, and that's where we're in a world of hurt right now. So I hope that as this film spreads, and I was so glad that Betty is asking about how to do that, is it'll be a way of building that trust. And so give me an amen. I'll stop preaching about trust, and we'll move on to other things in the day. But I'm really excited about the way this film can help people begin to think about how to talk to each other and develop trust that would cause us to handle really big problems.
Yeah, Bob, I'd like to say too that we've had a grad student do the master's degree, and we've offset all our carbon emissions. But being a small county out of the world it doesn't help us, because we've got to have the whole world there too. You know? Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's such a devilish problem, isn't it? I mean, if it were easier, it would be solved by now, but it's devilish because you just can't do it on your own. You got to have the whole world. And so my hope as a realist is that you got to make it in other countries' interest. And the reason I went into that long thing about Russia is if Mother Russia can come up with a realization that's in their interest, wow, maybe we can get other people to come to that realization too. It's pretty amazing, really.
Well, I've talked to our commissioners and mayors and stuff, and we have agreement with the climate change plan that we developed several years ago. And we want to be recognized when they come out with a carbon tax or a cap and trade, that, hey, we've already done our part.
Yeah.
You know? So,
yeah, you do have to do that. You have to figure out a way to reward people who are the early adopters, and it's essential, because you've already invested, and so we need to that needs to be rewarded.
Yeah, I think, with such a big, wide-ranging problem, we need people at the local level, people working at the national and the global level. Like, we need all of it. Just all of it is so important, and so we all have a role to play somewhere in there. Okay, so I'm going to just end this by telling everyone about this website, which is the website for this film, othersideofthehillmovie.com. Here is where you can learn more about the film, and you can also see the link to purchase or rent this film on Vimeo. And to go back to Betty's question, you can get information on how to host your own group screening, either in person or virtually. They are actually offering resources for community screenings at no charge through the rest of this year, because they want to help kickstart conversations about renewable energy and climate action and finding common ground. So please do go visit this website, find out how you can either just watch it with your family, or you can organize your own screening. And the more people who watch this, the better. It's very important for people to hear rural voices. It's not emphasized enough in our dialogue about climate change. So I really want to give deep appreciation to both Jim Walls and Nick Johnson for spending time with us today, and also to everyone here for taking some time out of your day to watch this film and to have this conversation. I hope you all got something out of it and are leaving feeling inspired. I will send you a follow-up email with a survey about the film, and also the resources that we talked about. So thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
thanks.